Hi, everybody. Activists held a rally at the White House yesterday to demand that President Biden press Congress for voting rights with as much vim and vigor as he is using to get the infrastructure bill passed. 5 activists were arrested while making the case. Here is Ben Jealous of People for the American Way on what's at stake.
President, Mr. President, tell your party in the Senate to fix the rules so we can get the voting rights bill through. Yeah. There's nothing sacred about the filibuster. It is an accident in legislative history, most frequently used to insulate Jim Crow from common decency and common sense. That's right. We have created carve-outs to the filibuster to fix roads and bridges. Donald Trump created a carve-out to the filibuster to pack the Supreme Court. That's right. Joe Biden can call on the Senate to create a carve-out to the filibuster or just get rid of it. Just get rid of it.
Amen. Get rid of it.
Get rid of it. I get calls, and I won one of the elections, a primary, from young black folks who've been thinking about running for statewide office in their states. And the conversations I've had in recent weeks have broken my heart. Never did I ever think that I would hear my peers say it may just not be worth it to run. The obstacles that they have put in the path of voters in my state are so high. The way they have targeted people from my community are so thorough that I don't know that it's worth it to run. And oh, by the way, the governor down here, they say, is given the talking about Texas, talking about Georgia, talking about Arizona, talking about so many things, has given his party the power to overturn the next election if they don't like the result.
That's right. We're looking at you, Florida.
When we say that our democracy is at stake, let's be clear. This is the biggest attack on American democracy since the rise of Jim Crow. And the tactic that they are using, state-level voter suppression laws, are the same tactic that they used at the start of Jim Crow. And if any senator tells you that a tradition that was used to insulate Jim Crow is so precious that it must be maintained, remind them there is a deeper tradition in our country that defines our country that must be maintained, and that is the tradition of a democracy.
That's right.
That ultimately always insists on evolving in the right direction. That can face a setback, that can be pushed back, but that the people ensure ultimately leaps forward.
That was Ben Jealous. Cliff Albright of Black Voters Matter also spoke on what's at stake at the rally that was this week in front of the White House, where 5 activists were arrested trying to protect the vote. Here's Cliff Albright of Black Voters Matter.
So excited to be here today, and it's so important that we are here to send this message to the president, to the White House, to Congress, that we need them to finish the job. That we don't need any more excuses. We need them to finish the job. Now, the other day on Friday, y'all may have heard, President Biden took a trip down to the Capitol in order to push through this infrastructure bill and reconciliation, and that's important, right? We want infrastructure for our communities, right? Yeah. But we can't go forward on that at the risk of giving up on the infrastructure of our democracy. So the same way that he took a trip down to the Capitol to push through his signature infrastructure, we need him to take a trip down to the Capitol and tell him, I want the voting rights now. That's what we need President Biden to do. We can't have him out there talking about, it doesn't. He said it doesn't matter how long it takes. It doesn't matter if it takes 6 minutes or 6 days, right? Y'all heard him say that. But as long as you got voting rights on hold, then it does matter how long it takes for you to pass infrastructure. We can't be sitting around waiting for you to come to an agreement on infrastructure and reconciliation while you got states out here like Georgia and Texas and other ones. They're doing their maps right now. They're gerrymandering right now. So no, sir, Mr. President, it does matter how long it takes for you to get through the infrastructure. And so what we need you to do is to prioritize the infrastructure of our democracy, to prioritize, to move voting rights, to move the Freedom Vote Act up ahead on the calendar. We can't wait for infrastructure. We need voting rights now. That's the message that we're going to send to President Biden today. I'm so excited.
That was Cliff Albright of Black Voters Matter. For more information on the work that either of these groups are doing, you can find them online, People for the American Way or Black Voters Matter. And in other news, House progressives held the line to ensure that President Biden's whole entire Build Back Better agenda would continue to move forward. Last week, you remember, Biden affirmed the need to pass both of the bills, the Build Back Better Act, which has those historic investments in jobs and climate and immigration and other things, as well as the smaller Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. They didn't pass yet, and now everyone is focused on dollar amounts involved. Just take a listen to your mainstream media. They are talking about dollars and cents. There's a method to this madness. The Republicans want a number that sounds huge to the American people that they can then in the next election throw in potential voters' faces saying, look, see, the Dems spent this much, vote Trump, or whomever's going to be the next Trump, whatever. So instead, it is important to keep our eyes on what is at stake for the people and keep talking about it in terms of what is at stake for the people. Historic climate investments, to stop the catastrophe that you can see with your eyeballs right now. Home care for the elderly and the disabled, which at some point, if you're lucky, you are also going to be elderly. The path to citizenship and protection for dreamers, TPS holders, farm workers, essential workers, and others, extending the child tax credits, which, by the way, have already led to historic reductions in child poverty just this year. So reducing child poverty, you could say we did that after you passed. Well, we already did it, but you could say we did it even more after we passed this bill. It also goes on to expand Medicare to cover vision, hearing, and dental, Medicaid expansion, and ACA subsidies so millions can access health care. There's paid family and medical leave, child care, free pre-K, free community college, which is, I guess, post-K, funding for housing and combating homelessness, lower drug prices. Corporations and the wealthiest Americans get to start paying their own fair share. These are all things that the mainstream media or you across the table from Uncle whoever could talk about instead of just how much it's going to cost. And let us put this in perspective, people. If the U.S. can give, as it did in 2020, $1.5 billion to Jordan, while, as the Pandora Papers have just revealed, its leader buys $100 million mansions all around the world, I think we can cover grandma's dentures back in Waukegan. Congress now has just under 4 weeks to agree on the full scope and scale of the Build Back Better Act and move it through both chambers, or alternatively, it could take till the end of the year, which is about 10 weeks away, which isn't that amazing? Christmas is less than 10 weeks away. I'm not ready. Please note, for all the media anxiety about the ins and outs of this process in DC, this is literally normal, the normal ebb and flow of a complicated negotiation over legislation that would make a huge difference in the lives of tens of millions of people. And, there are historic examples to show that this is totally normal. For context, in 2009, it took Dems until March of the following year to pass the Affordable Care Act, and they did that partially via reconciliation. And in 2017, it took Republicans until December 22, 2017, to pass their horrendous tax cuts, also via reconciliation. So don't get sucked into mainstream media's outrage machine on this, at least not yet. Oh, snap. I cannot wait to talk about this. Facebook, Insta, WhatsApp, they all went down on Monday. And of course, crack sales went up because people need some kind of fix. Everyone's addicted. Everyone actually raced over to Twitter, which I like to consider the methadone clinic of social media, if you will. Facebook's official story about what happened is that some router that coordinates network traffic went wrong. Hey, maybe someone accidentally kicked it on her way to the break room to talk her daughter off the ledge for the 5th time this month. Was I right, though? I was right. I'm very happy to be right that the leaker is a woman. I looked to see if this woman had kids. But all I could find about her was that she said in a quote that she believes empathy to be a key trait in almost all jobs. And now she's showing that she has it. Well done, my friend. And thank you. I have a little bit of a video here. This is Mike Lee speaking to her as she spoke to Congress yesterday. It's a little bit lengthy. I want to play it full screen for you, but see if you're not completely outraged. It basically shows that not only does Facebook knows what it's doing, especially when it comes to ads. And those ads about anorexia are not targeted to me. They're targeted to young girls on Instagram. And they are just horrendous, and they are very clear in what they are suggesting. So there are some ads that Mike Lee refers to here that you'll get a view of, and possibly the same amount of upset, outrage, and desire to see some change happen as I did by the end of this video. Enjoy.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Haugen, for joining us this week. It's very, very helpful. We're grateful that you're willing to make yourself available. Last week, we had another witness from Facebook, Ms. Davis. She came and she testified before this committee, and she focused on, among other things, the extent to which Facebook targets ads to children, including ads that are either sexually suggestive or geared toward adult-themed products or themes in general. Now, I appreciated her willingness to be here. I didn't get the clearest answers in response to some of those questions. And so I'm hoping that you can help shed some light on some of those issues related to Facebook's advertising processes here today. As we get into this, I want to first read you a quote that I got from Ms. Davis last week. Here's what she said during her questioning. Quote, "When we do ads to young people, there are only three things that an advertiser can target around: age, gender, location. We also prohibit certain ads to young people, including weight loss ads. We don't allow tobacco ads at all, meaning to young people. We don't allow them to children. We don't allow them to minors," close quote. Now, since that exchange happened last week, there are a number of individuals and groups, including a group called the Technology Transparency Project, or TTP, that have indicated that that part of her testimony was inaccurate, that it was false. TTP noted that TTP had conducted an experiment just last month, and their goal was to run a series of ads that would be targeted to children ages 13 to 17 to users in the United States. Now, I want to emphasize that TTP didn't end up running these ads. They stopped them from being distributed to users. But Facebook did, in fact, approve them. And as I understand it, Facebook approved them for an audience of up to 9.1 million users, all of whom were teens. So I brought a few of these to show you today. This is the first one I wanted to showcase. This first one has a colorful graphic encouraging kids to, quote, "throw a Skittles party like no other," which, as the graphic indicates, and as the slang jargon also independently suggests, this involves kids getting together randomly to abuse prescription drugs. The second graphic displays an anti-tip. That is, a tip specifically designed to encourage and promote anorexia. And it's on there. Now, the language, the anti-tip itself, independently promotes that. The ad also promotes it, insofar as it was suggesting these are images you ought to look at when you need motivation to be more anorexic, I guess you could say. Now, the third one invites children to find their partner online and to make a love connection. You look lonely, find your partner now to make a love connection. Now look, it'd be an entirely different kettle of fish if this were targeted to an adult audience. It is not. It's targeted to 13 to 17-year-olds. Now, obviously, I don't support, and TDP does not support these messages.
Phil, we can come back.
Particularly when targeted to impressionable children. And again, just to be clear, TDP did not end up pushing the ads out after receiving Facebook's approval. But it did, in fact, receive Facebook's approval.
Okay, so I would
so
suggest
I
everyone
think
going
this
online
says something.
and like
One
looking
could argue
for
that
this
it
and watching the
proves
rest
that
of it.
Facebook is allowing
We can
and
finish it
perhaps
off.
facilitating the targeting of harmful.
Yeah,
adult-themed
because
ads.
they go on and talk about how
children.
Facebook is targeting
Could you
kids with
please
these
explain to me,
ads
Ms. Haugen,
just because the algorithm
how
just
these
does that.
ads,
So I want to cut it off a little early
with a
because
target audience?
because we got other stuff to talk about before Richard Wolf comes on with us. Like when Facebook went offline all over the world, by the way, of course, I immediately thought that they had been hacked. It just seemed like that, stock prices and all, et cetera, probably means they have. And in fact, in the wake of the leaked documents and the outages, stock prices dropped 5%. That is a lot of scratch. Of course, I don't buy the mighty coincidence theory. I think maybe Facebook itself shut everything down, crashed their own stock, and bought it all back up themselves. I mean, I've seen billions. I know how this works, but maybe it was just kismet, them getting what they deserved. Facebook outages were quite timely as they proved the point Francis House, who we just saw, who is the whistleblower, who we just saw testifying before that Senate subcommittee yesterday about how the company's research into Instagram's negative effect on the mental health of young users. They didn't go with their own research. Absolutely crazy. Just the fact that Facebook went down basically proves, and people lost their minds, basically proves that Facebook is having some really super undue influence on people. And finally in our news, I'm sure you've all heard this before now, but in another principled leaker or group of leakers, has given the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists a trove of millions of documents showing just how sociopathically the rich behave, called the Pandora Papers. We're going to be talking with Professor Richard Wolf in the next part of this program on that. So stay tuned for our interview. You're watching Act TV.